everybody, and welcome to The Industry, an esports insider podcast where I speak to people and personalities within the esports sector. In today's episode, I'm joined by Jeffrey Chau, the Global Esports Director of Peripherals brand Razer. We're going to be talking about the role peripherals play in esports, not only from a marketing perspective, being an endemic brand in the scene, but also from more of a technical standpoint of why there are esports-specific peripherals starting to be launched and the role that they play for players who are actually competing in the scene. It's a really interesting conversation talking about, well, peripherals and the nitty-gritty stuff behind it. I really hope you enjoy this podcast. So let's jump into it. So, Jeffrey, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I think the first thing I want to do is actually get you to talk about yourself a little bit. Talk about how you ended up being the Global Esports Director at Razer and your journey. And then if you can give us a little bit of information about Razer in general. I'm sure a lot of people who are tuning into this podcast already know, but that would also be great as well.
Yeah, definitely. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Chau. I'm the Director of Global Esports here at Razer. Prior to Razer, I had about a decade of experience in the esports industry. I was a pro player. I co-founded my own esports org, which was Hollywood Hammers or Hammers Esports back then, and also got to work at Immortals as GM, head of mobile, Team Liquid, and TSM, recently as the head of esports and marketing for them. Before then, coming to travel and relocate all the way to Singapore to join Razer here. And then prior, back to my competitive gaming days was all the way back to South Korea, where I actually went to high school and grew up there in the early 2000s, where StarCraft Brood War became like what modern esports is today. That's the first time people were going to stadiums and filling it up. This is back in the early 2000s, and I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was a weird thing happening in Korea. And then I went on to go to college in the US, and then came back to esports actually during my time at Apple. But yeah, I've been a caster as well at the Asia Games for 2018. So I've casted, Arena of Valor, also in China for the World Cyber Games. I was a speaker, guest speaker, conference speaker, as well as an esports caster for Honor of Kings, which is a massive esports title in China. So I've been all over the world, done events in Australia, to Brazil, to North America, to Europe, to China, to Singapore, of course, to Jakarta in Southeast Asia, and of course the United States. As a player, as a caster, as a coach, as a GM, head of esports, and so on. And now here at Razer, so running the global esports team, where we have teams across all the regions that I just talked about.
I think we could talk about the entire esports ecosystem. I think with you in there, with every little bit of facet which goes in, but we have to talk about peripherals, because peripherals are, I think, something that is so interesting right now in terms of how they're developing from an esports landscape. I guess the first kind of question to kick off the topic is, it's a little bit of a broad question, but I think it's really interesting in actually explaining how crucial peripherals are to esports. For me, they live and breathe within the esports ecosystem, peripherals. Without a good keyboard, without a good headset or good mouse, it's hard to really truly get the most out of the game, especially from a professional player. But why do you think it is so important right now to have like esports specific peripherals in the esports ecosystem, as opposed to just gaming specific peripherals, for example?
Yeah, the esports peripherals have the best and latest technology and materials. You think I'm a tennis player, so as you guys know, the materials in the rackets have improved over time. And the same thing goes for the technology, within esports, the mice particularly, right? The sensor, and how accurate, how precise it is. It's evolved from wired to wireless, and now it's going more lighter, right? The designs have went from ergonomic to now symmetrical, and these all impact, and are a reflection of honestly where the esports players are trending. So what I mean by that is Valorant's a very fast-paced game. A lot more players are on symmetrical mice on Valorant, for example, and in the fingertip, there's a claw style, grip style, different types of grip styles, and the symmetrical mouse is much more popular than an ergonomic mouse that you see a lot of CS2 players, right? Counter-Strike players have been using a lot of the ergonomic mice like the Death Adder V3 Pro, for example. So I think peripherals are very important because it does make a difference in your performance. That's why Razer was one of the first companies that came out with the Death Adder, and then that was a game-changing esports mouse. That focused on performance, the best technology, the sensor, the click in terms of it's optical, right? So it prevents double click issues. There's a lot of technology that goes into these peripherals, and now you look at keyboards. You see our Huntsman V3 Pro with a rapid trigger. Wu-Tang is also a peripheral manufacturer that makes keyboards with the rapid trigger, and it helps with the response time for players. So there's a lot of things that go in that actually help improve the performance. So I can go into the mechanics of each of these peripherals for sure as we get into mice, keyboard, and so on, and how certain games have honestly elevated and have basically challenged manufacturers like Razer to build better and better products for the pros so they can compete at the highest level.
I think that's actually super fascinating when you say, because I think from an outside looking in, sometimes even though I report on the esports industry, you hear here are gaming peripherals and here are esports peripherals, right? From a branding marketing standpoint. But like you just said, it goes further than even just esports. It's like here are CS2 specific peripherals, here are Valorant specific peripherals. We're not even talking about mobile and console and PC all having different types of peripherals that are needed, right? It definitely goes further than that. So is that something that then Razer kind of have to look at when you're launching an esports product? You're like, okay, well, which actually market are we tailoring this towards?
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good question. As I joined, I have so much esports background, back in the early 2000s. I'm not an expert in esports. I'll say it right out because the esports has so many communities, so many games, so many regions, so many niches that no one can be a total expert in esports, right? And I think that's why with Razer, we just want to, if you look at our business, the game and the gamer, we want to be the middle layer in between that, providing all the products and services to the gamer. So Razer is just, we have our esports line of products, of course. We also offer the immersive experience line of products. We have anything from monitors, mics, cameras, to chairs and so on. So we're like the total gaming ecosystem, the lifestyle part, the immersive experience part, and then esports is the top layer, which is the pro line of products that pushes the edge of our technology and our competition. So if you think about esports, Razer looks at all facets of PC peripherals to mobile gamers to console. We have the Wolverine, and the Kitsune, for example, for the fighting game community. There's a lot of the esports industry is so big. There's a lot of large communities that want the best hardware so that they can play better, and they're inspired by the athletes, the esports athletes that they follow. Like Zekin is a recent Valorant international champion. He's our Team Razer esports athlete that we announced just recently, who's actually playing on a Razer prototype mouse that we'll be launching soon. And he won and was MVP of the entire event. And that is our latest and greatest mice, right? The best technology, perfect weight, perfect shape. We did a lot of research to design a better mouse, and that's going to happen every year, which is exciting because there's so much competition, so many great manufacturers and brands out there that also make esports products for the pro. But for us, we love it. We love it because we love competition, and we love that the esports industry is growing. All this talk about esports winter, yes, we definitely had it, but now I see summer coming, and you see the record viewership for Rainbow Six, Valorant, and all these titles. The gaming community and the esports specifically part of that gaming community is continuing to grow, and that's what we're seeing in our data.
And obviously, just from a more of an esports perspective, talking about opportunities, like you look at recently come out with Activision, with Blizzard, and NetEase, right? Finally having those games back in China is probably going to be really good for the ecosystem as a whole. What a time to sponsor and to have Zekken, right, as a partner. just won one of the biggest, one of the biggest Valorant tournaments. I believe the most watched Valorant tournament ever as well.
1.6 million viewers, record
insane.
Viewers.
Really shows the growth of the scene. I actually want to talk about that since you've brought it up. How much, when it comes to kind of the ambassador partnerships and stuff like that, talking about the development of peripherals. How much say do players, and sometimes obviously teams, when you sponsored teams in the past, how much say do they have in the actual mechanics of finding a right mice for them?
Yeah, so I think honestly that's what separates us from our competition is we're for gamers by gamers. That's always been our calling, our mission. That's branded everywhere you see us. And we live up to that because a lot of it's easy to say that you're a gamer, you're making something for a gamer, but we really live up to that core value of our company. And we have esports ambassadors that reach and connect with the players, and we get a lot of R&D done with these players. And we're not afraid to test our products because we believe in the quality of our technology and the competitiveness of our products in real life competition. So Zekken is using a prototype mouse. It's not launched yet, right? A lot of other players have used our prototype mouse, and no other brand would dare to do that because what if the mouse like fails them at the championship, international championship, or something happens, right? So we want to test in the real world settings, and there's no better test than that, right? So I think that for Razer, we do listen to the players very very closely. We're launching a few products that has a lot of input and feedback from players, and we listen to that very very closely, and that's why we're doing a lot of outreach. We have our sponsor teams also spend a lot of time giving us feedback about our products. We have a lot of lab testing and all that. And when we say for the pro, we really mean for the pro, right? And that's why our mouse has the best sensor in the market. It's the best in class precision. It's the pro optical sensor generation 2. We have 8K hyperpolling technology in there. You think about like the technology that we put into our products. The Huntsman V3 Pro's optical switches, it's lightning fast, literally, when it comes to like a rapid trigger and all that. For popular players like that, for popular games like Valorant. So I think that for Razer, we take that very seriously, and we really incorporate a lot of the pros' feedback into the future products that we make. And second is actually plays a role in that. Part of the agreement is him doing 2 deep R&D sessions with us, and he actually tried out and gave us feedback about the prototype mouse that he's been using. He actually tried it out, months ago. So that's been a great relationship between him and Razer for sure.
I think I want to kind of move on a little bit to about the critics of esports peripherals, because there are some out there in terms of why does it matter that you have like the best in class mice, headset, keyboards within esports? Is there that much of a difference in terms of a professional edge when it comes to that? How would you kind of respond to those kind of naysayers within that community?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would say it makes a big difference because $150 mice is way different than a $50 mouse, in terms of like how it's designed, the weight, the material, the sensor, the battery, the wireless polling. Because it's the, for example, the mouse that we have has this like smooth touch finish on it. It's been optimized for the pros, right? Where if you game, because like most pros, as we know, we train for like 10-12 hours a day or more, and we play all the time on our devices. And you can have sweaty palms. So how does the mouse and the texture, the finish on the mouse you know relates to heat and sweat and all that? How does it perform under those conditions? Like, these are all things that we test thoroughly. Other mice have cheap plastic and stuff, and yeah, you're not going to have. It's like saying, is a $50 tennis racket going to be comparable to a $200 racket? And the answer is, everyone knows the answer to that. So the same thing with mouse. Is there actual real technology like optical switches, and and like the sensor technology in terms of how many DPI, hyperpolling wireless, technology in terms of like the low latency, right? Because if you play on a mouse that has lower latency, and you have a monitor that's now hitting 500 hertz, you want a mouse that has a lower latency, because you're going to feel the difference. Actually, it's a very micro adjustment, but you will feel those, because in CS2 there's micro movements, and they're playing at such high frame rates that they will notice. And then the person that sees and reacts faster to an opponent is the one that's going to get the headshot first, right? So all these will add up over split seconds, milliseconds even in response time. So, and I think that's why monitors need to be higher hertz. Back then I thought 144 hertz was like, it was awesome. And think about it today, it's you can't play under anything less than 200 plus hertz. So I think that for professional gamers and where they're taking it, the technology continues to improve. And if you're not on the latest technology, you have a disadvantage. I mean, that's just on it. Like playing on a 144 hertz monitor was not comparable to playing on a 300 hertz monitor. There's a big difference, you can feel it, see it, everything. And then it's the same for a mouse, right? So I think that's the best analogy I could use for players that are skeptical. Is try it. Try console players when they play on TVs that are 60 hertz. You have a very big disadvantage. You can come play on a PC that will give you like 300 plus hertz response time. So
and I'm guess obviously if you could say if this comparison is wrong, then please do let me know. But I guess the way that I look at it is because technology is so intrinsically linked with the games themselves that I look at it a little bit similar to like F1, for example, where you can have the greatest driver in the world, but if they're driving a tractor essentially on a track, it will never be as good as, perhaps someone who is the second best driver in the world, but has the best car, for example. Would that be like an apt description for those who want to kind of understand this?
Definitely. And I can give like a very mechanical example is the rapid trigger on our Huntsman V3 Pro. You can actually adjust the actuation settings to 0.1, right? And you can adjust it to 0.4 to 1 millimeter. So basically, and then how fast the acquisition point is. Actuation point. Sorry, I don't know why I couldn't pronounce that for a second. So basically, when you press the key down, it will register the input faster, and then when you release it, it then basically tells your character to stop moving immediately. So a game like Valorant, for example, rapid trigger is very popular than Valorant, because if you're moving and shooting, you're punished heavenly in that game. Heavenly. I mean, you like try moving and shooting in Valorant and then try stopping, right? So when you have rapid trigger, right, it rapidly, when you actuate the key and you release it, it basically stops your character from moving like faster than a regular keyboard without rapid trigger. So you're actually at a disadvantage if you do not have rapid trigger in Valorant, right? So that's why technology matters, right? And then for CS players, well, some games, it will not make that much because it's really related to the game. So, for example, Huntsman V3 Pro is the most popular keyboard per pro settings for CS2 right now. And for CS2 players, they don't want too much of a rapid trigger sensitivity because CS2 compared to Valorant, when you move and shoot, you don't get punished as hard, right? So it's really game dependent, and these technologies are fine tuned for these games, and then that's why our Huntsman V3 Pro is completely, you can adjust and customize the entire rapid trigger actuation settings, right, to your sensitivity, so that when you're playing, it really matches like how you play, how fast you play, and how sensitive you want the keys to be. So it's like fully responsive to your how much pressure you want to put on your finger and how you're playing on your keyboard. That's huge. Like, you can fully customize it to how you want to play. A regular keyboard, like a Dell keyboard, won't be able to do that for you. So that's why like this technology matters. It actually makes a big difference. Because that split second where you're stopping before your opponent is, and you have a more accurate shot, that means you're gonna probably land the headshot before they do, right? And you have a faster monitor, you have a faster mouse. Like, all this stuff adds up, and that makes a competitive advantage. Definitely for a pro player versus a person that's on non-pro gear, for example.
And I think it's important to mention as well that Razer doesn't just obviously specifically do esports related gear, though these gears are available for people to buy, but these are designed for esports professionals, right? And like they are designed for the top of the top.
Yeah, they are, and that's why we go through so much testing with them, and we always look at including the best technology, the best sensor on the market, so that esports pros can push our technology to the limits. There's a lot of things that we have under production or research that we're doing that would enhance our products even further, because we think this might be beneficial. Because of the technology, we can make something like that could benefit the player in terms of helping them compete even more, right? So that's why we look at higher polling rates, because when you think about polling rates, the more that your mouse communicates, the smoother your mouse movements, and the more the better it'll feel like it's tracking, right? Because a lower polling rate means that your mouse is polling to your computer less, right? A higher polling rate, like 8,000 hertz, means it's polling much more often, and that means you have smoother mouse movement, especially for those micro movements and those quick reactions. Like that's going to matter, right? Because you're reacting, and the technology is helping you communicate to your PC much faster due to the higher polling rate.
I could talk about the technical side of peripherals all day, but I do want to mention the marketing standpoint as well, because there is a massive marketing opportunity that designing these type of peripherals offer, right? How big is it to continually have these products on show? I mean, we've seen it with there are certain websites that will show here is an exact professional player's kit and layout if you want that. How important is it to kind of have your brand in these esports tournaments, not even through like a partnership or sponsorship, just by people using those and being comfortable to use those for your
Yeah,
overall strategy?
yeah, I love that, because when people ask me, when I'm in esports at Razer, my product is Team Razer, right? And they're the faces of our elite pro line, And if you go to like Razer Esports page, we start with Zekken, right? We start with the persona, we start with the person, the athlete, so to speak, right? That's our product, that we're trying to marketing. And Razer is sponsoring him. Of course, he's using all of our gear, but we're supporting his journey to be a champion, or he is a champion, and Razer is enabling his moments in esports. So when it comes to marketing, the esports organizations and the athletes, the players, they play a huge role in that, right? Because they are the proof points that say that our products are amazing, and they have helped and supported this person or this organization to win the championships, and they're that reliable, right? That a champion is on it. For example, the Rainbow Six Siege Invitational that saw record viewership, W7M was on it, and they're all on Razer Death Adders. They won the championship on Razer Gear, and that's just a testament, right? It's a proof point that we call in marketing that that shows that our products are that good that the best players in the world are using it. So that's why marketing is really important, because when a consumer looks at especially when I would say, like, if you're starting out a new game, it's not that important, right? But if you have a breakthrough in performance, so these are like the three key points that consumers like buy and decide to upgrade their gear is when, one, they have a breakthrough in performance. So let's say you're diamond, and then now, oh my god, you got to masters, right? You have a breakthrough, and now you want better gear. You want to push into masters, and maybe become a predator or challenger or whatever, right? Higher and higher. So breakthrough in performance is very important. That's why having these proof points, and they tend to be people that also watch esports, because they like ranking up, and they like following and learning from the best players, so that they have a more enjoyable game as they perform better at the game, and that's why they want better gear. Number two is when they need to upgrade their devices, and they try a new game, right? And the last is like with the device breaks, obviously, they want to buy a new one. So having this marketing with our esports orgs, and how esports is always on, right? Every season there's championships and all that, and Razer being a part of those moments, we'll hopefully catch the consumers at these key touch points, right, where they make a decision to upgrade their gear or replace their gear, and then they're going to pick Razer because, oh, I just saw a team that was on Razer win. So that's why marketing is super important, to get these proof points out to the consumer, and then influence their decision to pick Razer if they aren't already a Razer customer.
I guess in the end, though, as well, it can also be a double-edged sword, right? Because unlike other partnerships where you can kind of just put a logo on there and everything like that, you've got to also then prove that the equipment that they are using is good enough, right? Zekken isn't going to sponsor any peripheral brand if he knows that performance
Correct.
is going to drop off that, right? And also viewers, if they see a peripheral brand starting to be faulty and start breaking or constantly having problems, and then maybe a player roasts it on Twitter or on Twitch and stuff like that, it becomes an issue, right? So you've also got to maintain that you keep that standard as well, right? Is that really important for a peripheral brand?
Yeah, and people, like, I know on social media they get so nasty. They're like, oh, you're saying that because you're sponsored by this brand, because brands do sponsor athletes, but pro players that I know at the top of their level of competition will not work with a brand that they know is not good enough, right? Why would I just sign it for dollars and then it will affect me to win the championship? Pro players, and I was a pro myself, they care most about winning, and they will not let a poor quality peripheral or mouse or keyboard impact and get in the way of that, right? So Zekin would, if Razer wasn't the best of the best out there and that met his standards to compete and win a world championship, which he recently won, then he wouldn't have signed with us. That's just the honest truth, right? And that's why pro athletes they will make a decision that will help them win. That's what they care most about. From my interaction as a pro, and also from working with a lot of pros, managing them, leading them, and all that. So, and if the peripheral manufacturer isn't good enough, they're not going to sign. They're not going to want to, or maybe they might get sponsored, but they might be on a different mouse, right? Because they know that the mouse, is not high quality enough for them to really perform at the highest level. So that's why we're confident, because organizations, to athletes, esports athletes, and pros, they they respect Razer. Razer has a strong brand to uphold, and we truly believe in making the best products for them. So I agree with you that people may question if the hardware is good enough, but that's why we test it with the best of the best out there, and make sure that Razer is always at the cutting edge.
And on top of that, how hard is it being a peripheral brand in what is actually a very competitive market? Arguably one of the most competitive sponsorship markets out there, because it is so intrinsically linked to gaming, and there's a lot of gaming brands with peripheral gear that then have gone into esports. Like, how do you manage this kind of market, for example?
Yeah, I mean, the peripheral market is pretty big, right? It's hundreds of billions of dollars. But for esports, it is the highest end product, right? It's the most expensive, the higher margin, performance class of products, right? So when you think about how big that market is and why it's important, we that's why we want to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to the competition. So
Is there a is there sometimes certain little rivalries that you have within Razer itself then, when you see, say, like two teams and one set of team is using your brand and then another team is using another team's brand, and you're like, oh, maybe what if whenever there's as a lot of esports fans will know, whenever there's a tech pause, right, is there always a nervous silence as well, being like, well, what's the tech pause, and whatnot?
Yeah, I think there it's always going to happen. I mean, there's a lot of competition is good for a reason. So if we see our players using other competitor products, that's feedback to us that we can learn from, right? Like, why is the case? Normally, it has to do because they really like the shape, or it's a safe option. And honestly, from a pro player's perspective, if they've been using this product for a year or longer, they're not comfortable switching, right? It's like the analogy I use again. I love tennis because, like, if I've been using this tennis racket like Wilson for a long time and I'm winning with it, I'm doing really well with it, and you're asking me to switch to like a new brand, this like hot new shiny object, but what if the grip doesn't fit me? The racket is not the right weight and shape and all this stuff, right? The right material. There's a lot of factors that go in. And a mouse is very personal. I mean, their grip is very specific. Most mice, when they switch, they have to slightly tweak their grip a little bit, right? Because every mice doesn't have the exact same shape. So that's why, these things happen. But for the most part, a lot of players do try us out. And once they convert to it and they win, it's a psychological moment, right? So once like I use a new racket and I'm winning with it, I'm like playing better with it. Guess what? I'm gonna be more likely to switch to that racket because it's helping me win. And again, it all matters to like what's gonna help me win more. So I think like that's the key, and that's why making the best products is super important. And continue to innovate and drive the technology innovation. And like your last question, there's a lot of peripheral manufacturers out there. It's super competitive. There's a lot of sponsors for the leagues, for the teams, but the market is very big and it's growing, right? So the way I look at it is competition is healthy. A growing market is a more fun market to play in, of course. And that's why we want to be ahead of that. And with the teams that we work with, we get a lot of feedback from them. regarding our products. We send forms out, we talk to them one-on-one, we have feedback sessions that I join where they talk about and they show us the keyboard or whatever, they show it up close to the camera like this. It's great, and that's what I love. They're giving us so much solid feedback, stuff that you would never see happen with other like normal players. But the pro player, you'll see these issues happen because the way that they're using the specific buttons more often than any other you know non-pro player does. So it's very interesting and it's a lot of fun for sure, because you can never satisfy a pro player. They always want the best, they want you to be better, and they can never satisfy themselves, to be honest, right? They want to be better than they were yesterday and constantly better. And that's why it's never gonna be it's never gonna end, right? And that's what makes it so fun, because you're always like pushing and trying to be more competitive from a technology standpoint to keep up with the pros and meet their demands. But also the pros, that's their personality, that's what drives them, the competition. And that's what I love about esports the most.
I think when you were talking about actual having peripherals that are personal to players, I look at it sometimes that footballers will have the same type of boots for years and years and years throughout their entire playing career, for example. To kind of then go on to that a little bit from like a marketing and a partnership perspective, then how important, I mean, maybe not just for Razer specifically, but just your opinion as a whole in the esports. Is it important that we kind of, when we ensure that we have partnerships, which obviously help with revenue, with tournaments and with teams and stuff, that it isn't kind of putting them in a box saying you have to use these type of peripherals, you have to use these type of monitors, mice, headset? Is there that balance of actually wanting to partner with a team, but then also not kind of enforcing these technologies onto a team itself? I look at it, for example, with tournaments,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think esports it's interesting because I worked with orgs, and you know it's very player first. All the brands want the players to be on mice that they're most comfortable with. A lot of Counter Strike contracts, it says in there that, hey, I need to use the mouse that I want to use, right? I'm most comfortable with. For us, it's authenticity. Like, I'm not going to sponsor a team or a player that doesn't want to use our mouse genuinely. Like, I never want to force it, right? Because to me, esports is all about authenticity, right? There are too many people that are inauthentic to esports coming in and trying to tell us what esports is or should be. It's so weird. But people within esports, they're just living it and enjoying it, right? So I think for this specific one, authenticity is very important, and it's a word that's overused, I would say, in esports industry. But for me, it's going to market with an authentic story, right? So if we're forcing a player to use our products, we don't do that. First of all, we don't like doing that. But I'm not going to sign anyone or org that doesn't want to. So there's orgs that we've had that are not using Razer, and they're no longer with us, right? And that's a clear thing that I've said, is because when we go to market and we have these players as testimonials, they're on the retail packaging and so on, and they're not using our products. That's kind of inauthentic, right? That's why sponsor, right, at that point. And I think that it's important that the players and the organizations we work with do believe in us and our products and use it. I think that's very important, and that makes the sponsorship much more fun, much more enjoyable. It's a better relationship. So I think that that's important, and I think that for anyone that's trying to force players on a mouse that doesn't meet their expectations, and then I think that's going to hurt the players, right? For us, it's like we have so many mice, the Death Adder, the Viper, and these are all performance line products. So we make sure that our products will always meet the expectations of our pro players, right? And then if they don't want to use our products, okay, what's the feedback? What can we learn from it to then make and iterate on the product to make it better and better, going forward. So I think that's a very important part of it, because when a consumer looks at a Team Razer athlete, they are genuinely using Razer, right? They're not, it's like the best analogy is like Nike sponsors Michael Jordan, and then Michael Jordan doesn't believe in Nike, and he's wearing Adidas on the court. So can you imagine? Can you imagine that? That's just crazy. Or you play tennis and like Roger Federer is supposed to be with Wilson. I don't know who was his sponsor, but and then he uses a different brand racket, but he's a Wilson athlete. That's just so inauthentic. It's jarring. It's like we can't have that, right? And that's why it's important to have this authentic and genuine use of the product on both sides, right? Where Razer and the player, loves our products and uses it, and that makes for a much happier relationship from a marketing standpoint too.
And I guess just to kind of dispel what is probably sometimes a myth, at least from a Razer standpoint, then when a partner does get sponsored, is it in the contract that they are like kind of they have to use these products, or a conversation said beforehand, like how does actually partnering with this team or with this player kind of come about?
Yeah, it depends on, honestly, it's more the player agreement that they have, right? Because players have their own contracts that they have with their organization, so there's specific clauses that certain players, especially for CS, for example. That's why you see a lot of CS players like switch like mice all the time and stuff. So that's basically a part of that agreement. For Razer, we talk about the authenticity, so we do ask for like at least one player, for example, to be a genuine asset to go to market. Because without that kind of guarantee, right, in the agreement, then the sponsorship is what are we really paying for, right? Because we need a go to market asset where this one player we go to market, we put in marketing materials or on retail packaging is a player that is on Razer genuinely. I think that's very important, right? Do we ask for everyone to be 100% on Razer and all gear? That'd be great if they can do that, but that's not something that we force unnaturally to players. We work with the organization, we get feedback, we send like an esports ambassador specialist to work with the players to help them normally it's like tweaking the grip usually, and then these little things, because like our products are honestly technology wise better than other products out there, right? So it's a factor of like helping work with the players and getting them used to the mouse and the grip. It's like putting on a different pair of shoes, right? If you go from Adidas to Nike, or trying out a new racket, and I think like that's support. But if it's like a sponsorship, for example, we have with Faker, or an athlete like for Zekin, then yes, we require that they're fully on Razer, right? Because we're going to go to market. We're going to market that he's a Razer Team Razer esports athlete. We're going to put him in commercials, and we can't have him not on Razer. It's just going to be very inauthentic. And what's the point of the sponsorship at that point, right? So yes, for specific athletes, though, we do actually require that they're fully on Razer, because that's part of the agreement, and that's the economic agreement, but that's also the marketing and rights agreement too. So that's worked out really well, and as you know, Faker has won so many world championships with the Death Adder. So there's no better proof point than that. So that's why with Team Razer esports athletes specifically, yes, we do require that compliance in there for sure.
How long kind of goes into the discussions when it comes to then certain things like that? Because I'm guessing it's not just, as you've kind of mentioned with Second, I guess it's not just here's an offer, sign it right now.
Yeah, I think for us, it's not even about that clause. It's really letting them try the product and playing with it. And if he really likes it, he believes in it, then it's easy, right? It's a straightforward conversation. But like, yeah, I'm fine using only Razer Gear because I love it. I believe in it as well. And then I'm fine being sponsored as a Team Razer esports athlete, right? That's how it starts. Like we don't ever otherwise we wouldn't sign him, right? Because like it would be and again inauthentic messaging, marketing message, if like or God forbid, this is like for me as a pro player before, like personally for me, we don't want him to be on a product that he doesn't believe in, doesn't want to use, and God forbid he doesn't win. That's actually not even worth the sponsorship either, right? Like you force the player to be on your product and they don't end up winning with it. That's not fair to the player. I don't want that. That's why like them genuinely and wanting to use our product is very important. It has to start there. Otherwise, like forcing compliance is not what we want, right? You think about like bad managers. I use this because I've led and managed for over 20 years. Bad managers lead by compliance, right? They have to lead by the contract. Or this is your job description. You better do your job. It's compliance, managing by compliance. The best way is to lead by commitment. It's a leadership thing, right? It's a commitment. It's a relationship, a mutual beneficial relationship where he's committed to Razer, Razer's committed to them, and we're leading each other through this beautiful relationship. We're not trying to force compliance and like dictate things to you, right? So I think that's my philosophy personally as a leader myself, and I've worked with so many teams across many different organizations. That's always been my philosophy working with players. That's why with a lot of teams I've led, they won championships across 4 different regions, right, and 3 different games, and all different organizations. So I think compliance versus commitment is a big differentiator. The best uh, leaders and companies will lead through commitment, and then the others will have to force compliance. That's basically what it comes down to.
See, that's the esports knowledge of working of all the organizations, I guess, coming into play as well, right?
Yeah, I think my story is because I grew up in Korea and I competed there, and then I actually worked in business, right? I think in esports there's a lot of people don't have the same business savvy and business acumen. I would say they kind of lack it, and it's not their fault. They love esports, they jump into it. But because I worked at Apple and these amazing companies have taught me so much about business, and run my own company as well. I ran a startup as well and all that, esports startup, gaming startup, etc. I think that helps me a lot. And one thing that I want to talk about here in this podcast is like the conception of fans, right? The esports winter and the business model in question, right? People are doubting esports is because fans are not enough, right? What I mean by that is they think fans are like a subset of customers, but fans are just they love you and they like you and they're an emotional relationship to your brand as an esports organization, but they're not your customers unless they buy from you, right? And you cannot run a business if you don't have customers, right? You can have a ton of fans, and that's why impressions and all this stuff I don't really like, because that just followers, all that is, yeah, that's great, but to me engagement is way more important. It's a reflection of your fandom, but it also means that you're activating your fandom really well, so that's why your engagement's higher, and that means the likelihood or the chances of you converting that emotional relationship into a business and practical relationship where they're buying from you now and they're really supporting you financially. That is where the esports business model needs to be figured out, because a lot of esports orgs, they don't do that very well. And that's something that I'm glad the winter happened, because it weeded out all the bad operators, to be honest. Like, they don't understand business 101, unit economics and all this stuff, and it's going to bring in stronger leaders and business operators that understand fandom and how to make that flywheel successful, right? Fans to customers, and so on. That's a very important part, that the best esports orgs will be able to do that.
I guess from a peripheral standpoint as well, I do want to talk about the how important it is to diversify even as a peripherals brand itself, not just being esports specific. I'm going to talk about a little bit about like EPOS, for example, was like a esports and gaming headset company that really heavily pushed themselves as like high end esports. And full disclosure, I really like the product. I had the product for a little bit, and I really did like the product. But how important was it to actually have diversification? Because in the end, unfortunately, EPOS ended up having to shutter its operations because it basically couldn't sustain being in that one niche.
Yeah, and there's so many. Again, that's why I'm not an expert in esports. There's so many regions, so many companies in esports. I was even in the esports startup space, so I think that a lot of esports brands, they have to, especially startup, because a lot of esports are startups, right? So yeah, this is the high quality audio hardware, like you talked about. So I think that they did a few partnerships with tournament organizers like Blast, and I think that the main thing is they have to look at the total addressable market and their unit economics, right, when it comes to customers, and then how they're activating their partnerships to eventually grow their business. So I think that what happened with a lot of these products and these startups is they honestly had too much burn, so they overspent on marketing. Back then, it was like very competitive because there's so much capital going into esports, where the sponsorship, there was a lot more demand for sponsors, or a lot of sponsors had demand for esports, and then it was very competitive. So like you had to compete against other marketing, other brands that were spending on marketing dollars as well. So what happened is a lot of companies like overspent on marketing, so their expenses rose, and then the revenue never came after. So you're seeing that happen with a lot of esports orgs and brands now. So that's why a lot of esports org have closed down, because the revenue that they projected that would come never came, right? And a lot of sponsors like pulled back, And now we have the reverse where there's so much demand for sponsors, so much inventory for sponsors, you know, and there's not enough sponsors to go around, right? So that's been happening now in the scene. So with EPOS specifically, I think that their headsets, there's just too much competition, and they were never able to break to get the type of traction they needed to sell enough hardware to be successful in that high end, high quality category. And it's not easy. I mean, we built this Black Shark V2 Pro here, and we're not a leader in the headset in terms of, you look at market share. HyperX is like has the most market share for pro players, and it's taking us, a company like Razer that has so much experience in gaming, it's taking us a long time to even break in, right? So that's why for a lot of these companies, it's very hard. It can be very brutal. Um, so EPOS is EPOS is what you're talking about. Yeah. So that's why, they weren't able to grow their business to a level where they could break even and be revenue positive, right? And that's the story for a lot of esports startups and companies, unfortunately.
I want to talk about a little bit more positive news as we go to the end of this podcast when it comes to trends within the peripheral center. So, like, what are some of the biggest trends that you're seeing right now within the esports scene that maybe a lot of players are kind of demanding a lot more, or just as the general kind of onset?
Yeah, I would say the biggest trend is I would say, we had ergonomic and symmetrical. I think symmetrical mice is more popular now. I would say 2 to 1. So for every like ergonomic pro player, you see 2 symmetrical pro players. The mice are much lighter. They pro players demand lighter mouse with longer battery, right? So it lasts longer. So you're seeing a lot of technology go basically symmetrical, smaller and lighter, right? Because there's a lot of fast-paced games like Valorant is a perfect example where you need to have a lot of vertical movement, right? So you think about a bigger mouse, you can't really be able to move, as quickly if your mouse is bigger and heavier, right? You have limited space on your mouse pad, right? And that's why things are going smaller. The mouse not only getting smaller, but the keyboards, right? We had 10 keyless or TKL, and now it goes to like 60% keyboards, right? Or we call it a mini for the Huntsman V2 Mini, where it's a much smaller keyboard, so you have more space to move your mouse, right? So like Apex Legends is another game that I love and I play a lot of. I like a smaller mouse on Apex because it allows me to, because there's a much more vertical movement, right? These are much quicker paced games, and a smaller mouse gives you an advantage because you can easily track and hit your shots when these players like jumping, all over the map and stuff. So that's why these games require different grip styles, smaller mice, symmetrical mice, and that's why Valorant, for example, Fortnite as well. You build, right. You think about Fortnite, you have to build up, and it's vertical. All the crazy fights. It's so crazy how much they build and and fight each other through all the materials in Fortnite, and Fortnite is like 80% of the pro players on Fortnite are like symmetrical players, I believe, symmetrical mice players. So that's what the trend is showing in the data. So, and that's why like we have a symmetrical mice launch that's coming out very soon, right? So I think that these are the trends that we're seeing for keyboards. It's definitely rapid trigger, right? Smaller keyboards, right? TKL is like the very popular format, but now it's like the 60% keyboards that you see, like Huntsman Mini, the Wu-Ting 60 HE. These smaller keyboards are better, and mouse pads is softer, right? Like extra softer, so it has the good tracking, but also good stopping power as well. So it's really interesting to see how the peripherals trend moves, and mice now have bigger feet, right? The skates are bigger as well. The much bigger skates to give you that faster movement, when it comes to how it interacts with your mouse pad and so on. So yeah, but like Shroud said, you have to have the same mouse and the same mouse pad, right? Otherwise it's not going to work well together. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so I think like that's the major trends that I see from a peripheral standpoint, from mice, keyboard, and mouse pad.
Just for someone who's not aware, like, what do you mean by skates, for example, on the actual equipment itself?
Oh, I can't show this. The skates are uh it's the material that glides on the mouse pad. So if you look at this, it's this piece right here. So bigger skates, right? So that gives it responds differently to how it moves over the mouse pad. So bigger skate normally, gives you a smoother, faster movement, and mice are going faster now. You want faster moving mice, smaller, and so on.
As a couple final questions, I actually really want to talk about VR and AR. Now, I actually don't know what an answer to this would be, but I'm really interested. Do you think that VR and AR gaming and the potential rise of VR and AR gaming will have an impact on the peripheral market? Because that's a completely different mode, right?
Yeah, definitely. I used to work for Apple, so I think you think about AR, VR, it's a more immersive. Razer has immersive tech. We have a RGB chroma. We have HD haptics, right? Where it's multi-directional haptics. So when you have a grenade over your head, you can actually feel it. It's pretty amazing. And then you think about like spatial audio. So we have THX spatial as well. Like our blades, like what I'm using is THX spatial audio certified. So with Apple, and then they talk about the future of spatial computing. Like I believe that that is the future, right? You think about like before the mouse was invented, right? The graphical user interface or the GUI interface was MS DOS. You were typing, games and like Pac-Man and and doing XEX commands. That for people that don't know, if you're younger, you're not gonna know what I'm talking about. But MS DOS was there, and there's no mouse until the mouse was invented, and that was like a new like way to interact with your PC, because now you had a pointer that you can move with your mouse, right? So as we move more towards, like, you think about AI and how it's natural language, like the whole rave is about natural language, and like how you talk to ChatGPT, and it's a computer that talks back to you. So the everything is going to be more human centric, right? It's going to be natural language. Spatial is like if you think about the Apple Vision Pro, you're using your fingers, your eye tracking. That is your mouse now, right? That's how you control the computer. You control what you're looking at. So a lot of things will grow more human, right? And that's the best way I can explain it, honestly, because like, is a mouse and keyboard going to be part of the future if you look like 50 years from now? I don't know. I can't answer that question, but let's see what happens with how technology is. AR, VR is going to be all about your body movement, your immersive experience, what you're feeling, how you're reacting to this more immersive experience. So yeah, there's a lot to be hopeful for. I think I'm super excited. Like, I think AI is going to change gaming. The game can change like instantly in front of you. Like, the storyline can change because the AI is really smart. The game can completely change the type of game that you're in as well. I can't imagine like how crazy gaming is going to be in the future when it comes to AR, VR experiences, how immersive it will be. We're going to reach a point where the technology is going to have such low latency, right? We talk about the mice and having low latency with hyperpolling 8K technology, but imagine where the latency is so low that your eyes and your brain cannot distinguish the difference between reality and a video game. Think about it. We're going to get to that point because the latency, the hertz, it's going to be lifelike, and it's going to be crazy. What's going to happen then? And imagine what sports or what esports will be made from these type of experiences. It's going to be very interesting, I think, for the next few decades. I'm really excited about the future. With AI and everything that's happened with immersive tech, and how you get to feel more of the digital world. And that's why like our HC haptics technology is like so cool. We just announced it at CES. There's like 16 actuators, like that, like basically give your body feedback, and multi-directional. So like, like where a lot of the sound or grenade blasts or shots are like coming from in a multi-directional sensory immersive way, right? It's just wild to think about it, and that's why I'm so excited about the future and what esports could look like, honestly, in 10-20 years from now.
As an anime fan, it reminds me that it's getting closer and closer to Sword Art Online. I don't know if you understand that reference.
Yes, right. It's a great show. Yeah.
As
Yeah.
a final question, though, I like to talk about just the esports industry as a whole, and kind of like what you are excited about in the industry. So, what is something that kind of comes to your mind within the whole industry and the climate of it that you're looking forward to in the future?
Yeah, I think for esports, it's about the technology. I think that's the human story to it is because people think about esports and gaming, and a lot of traditional sports people will discount it, and now that's being officially recognized by countries, right, as a professional sport, right? You get a visa for it. It's recognized by the international Olympic community. It's a profession, right? Esports is a recognized like athlete, esports pro. So I think that's very promising for the future. But you think about back to the core, esports was born because of technology, right? Because of the internet, PC gaming, and all that. And I think as technology continues to evolve, esports is going to continue to adapt, and it's going to be even more exciting products and games and experiences that will come from it. And you think about like the future of content, right? Gaming is content, it's interactive content. You think about like how we went from simple tweets and like texts, to and then we went to Instagram with pictures and filters, and now what is it today? It's like, and then we went to YouTube, and then went to streaming, and then TikTok is all short video, right? And now the next level of content is going to be gaming, and how interactive it's going to be, and how everyone is going to be able to be able to create games and content. And the next esports are going to be born from all these like amazing ideas, where because you look at like League of Legends, Battle Royale, these are all modded games that were created, that were built by people who just loved gaming, and they created these beautiful games that became the esports they are today. So I think with technology continuing to advance, with what we talked about, AR, VR, and all this stuff, I feel like the story is gonna esports will be we're finally gonna we'll reach a point where we'll stop comparing esports to sports, because it's completely different. It's the same in terms of the competitiveness, but like these are just we're gonna see esports be looked at as esports and the technology that powers it. So that's why I'm really excited about the future. I think that if you look at as the prices of hardware falls for PCs to and cloud gaming will eventually reach a point where the latency is low enough, and everyone has enough access to 5G and super fast wireless technology, where cloud gaming can onboard hundreds of millions more of gamers, and then we have like much we can have like 9 out of 10 people in the world become gamers, because before, if you think about the beginnings of the Nintendo and all that, it was like 10%, 20% of people were gamers, and now you look at today, it's many more people are gamers because of mobile phones, consoles, and all that. So I think like gaming is going to continue to go more mainstream, and especially with technology improving, the esports industry is going to become something completely different. This winter, we'll look back on as like the opportunity of a lifetime, to get involved in esports, to support it. And that's why Razer is very bullish. We're doing some cool things later this year that's about esports, that shows us that we're committed to esports industry and the space. So I'm excited to, once those launches, those campaign launches, I'm really excited to talk about it more and all that. So
Well, when we'll have to get you on another time, because I could talk for another hour about this, honestly. But I don't think the bosses would be too happy with me if I keep going on. But I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. I really appreciated the conversation about peripherals, going into the nitty gritty and into the marketing. Is there any last words that you have to say about Razer, or just just some final words yourself before we sign off?
yeah, I would say that the future of esports is very bright. I know there's a lot of discussion and the business and the question around the winter, the economics. I would say, given the fandom and what I see from across the industry, you're going to see this as a period where the esports industry has learned a lot, and we're going to take those learnings and we're going to improve everything about it. Where you see much more successful businesses come out of it, and a lot great partnerships. I'm here to activate and help Second become one of the most recognized esports players in the world. So I'm happy that Z would join Razer on this journey, and that's what I'll leave it at. Is like, don't be too pessimistic. Optimists are the people that will benefit from the future, and they're more forward thinking. So I think when it comes to esports, all the winter and the negative thing that has happened is all going to be a big learning lesson and learning phase for us to then continue to evolve our industry and grow it, right? And what I'm seeing from the data and everything, it's all headed up and to the right, so to speak. So I'm really excited about the future. Really excited about all the esports orgs I have the opportunity to work with, and all the athletes, like esports athletes like Zekin, that I get to work with. So I'll end with that, and thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm gonna upgrade my setup now after this conversation. So.
You'll be the next Zekin. Don't worry. I know.
And that's the end of the episode. Thank you to Jeffrey for taking the time to actually speak to me about esports peripherals. And if you are interested in other inner workings of the esports sector, then don't forget to look at our other episodes that we have done, whether you can see them on YouTube or on Spotify or any audio platform that you're listening to this on right now. We talk about data with Grid, we've talked about tournaments with Blast, and we've talked about the SEA and Asia Pacific esports scene with Talent Esports. A wide range of guests in previous episodes. But until then, though, I'll see you next week.